Hello to
Hello.
everyone.
I sincerely apologize to the viewers for that. Good evening and welcome to the first and only call-in show dedicated to the simulation hypothesis. This is Home of Neon Alliance. I am the one and only RAO, and joining me today are BittyBuddha and Mr. Bitty. I had my mic muted so y'all saw my lips moving and didn't hear anything. Except for BittyBuddha and Mr. Bitty. I was kind of left out of the conversation on this one. But BittyBuddha, could you tell us about a little bit about what you're doing online with your channels, your online presence?
Yeah, so my name is BittyBuddha on basically every social media platform. I got my claim to fame, you could say, on TikTok, where I make atheist content. I particularly help deconstructing Christians understand theology from an anthropological and ethnographical perspective, and kind of walk them through a lot of the Bible doctrines that they were taught and how they developed throughout history. I also have a YouTube channel with my co-host Pat Lowinger. He is a historian and archaeologist. It's called That's That, where we talk history, archaeology, and theology. I'm also part of the Atheist Network group on YouTube. I do a call-in show on there, and then some guest appearances. And then I'm also on Twitter, where I just kind of make fun of Frank Turek a lot. And that is me.
Now, Mr. Bitty, you don't have quite the same online presence. Is there anything that you're? Oh, okay, so you're just a sidekick.
Exactly. I'm just Mr. Bitty for.
He's started a YouTube. He did start a YouTube, his own Mr. Bitty channel, where he teaches people NFTs and cryptocurrency.
It's one
doesn't.
very specific thing about NFTs and cryptocurrency, not general knowledge. It's very, very, very specific.
All right. Well,
He's trying.
that's Mr. Bitty, just the way you would expect it to be seen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So, with that said, I was on the Atheist Network group a while back, and BittyBuddha was co-hosting alongside Ozzy Oz and Shane the Skeptic. And what had happened was Shane is extremely skeptical. I guess we can infer that from the name. And when you see Ozzy Oz and I interacting, that's not an act. We are actually friends who enjoy being jackasses to each other. So, she was caught in that while I was explaining the simulation hypothesis on the call-in show, but I feel like I did BittyBuddha and the Simhype community a bit of a disservice for not being able to articulate my points as well as I'd like to. And it was actually Mr. Bitty who did a better job of explaining my brain than I did. So I wanted to bring both of them on the show today so that I could help explain it better, because there's a quote from Albert Einstein that says, if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it well enough. So I want to work to be able to understand it well enough that I can explain it to somebody who's never heard of the simulation hypothesis before. And go ahead.
I was just saying that's a good goal. It's a noble thing to try and do, to better your education on it and be able to deliver it.
Yeah.
And another thing I want to state and restate is that I am not insulting anybody's intelligence or intellect when I speak over their heads regarding the simulation hypothesis. I feel it's a shortcoming on my end, because I'm a speedrunner too, so if I start talking about damage boosts, frame rules, and things like that, it's like people who don't play video games very often aren't going to understand anything about what I said, and it's just going to just sound like random sounds that might be words.
A little bit.
And so, was there anything that like specifically popped up in your head that you had questions about regarding the simulation hypothesis?
Are you asking me and Mr. Bitty?
Yes, I'm asking two of you. Like, we're gonna take calls later on. But I like to do. I kind of like to do the intro, lecture and talk before we take calls, so that people can kind of like have a topic if they don't have something that they wanted to call in with.
Okay, so I gathered what you were saying when you did call in, and then I think you've called in twice. And the second time, I was trying to help Oz understand what you were saying, because both times I don't think. So from what I understand is that in the simulation theory that you adhere to, because I think there's different kinds of them, like there's the ancestor simulation. I'm learning about a religious sort of simulation, and then also I think there's the holographic simulation. I don't know much about any of them. But like what I know from what you've told me is that there's a few things that happen within science that leads you to believe that because of your background of video games, you are equating these scientific phenomena with then the notion of being in a simulation. For example, you have something pertaining to like a glitch and a save point and the Planck length being then the pixel of this simulation. Is that correct?
I might need you to re-educate me on the thing that I said about save points, because I actually do a lot of these episodes. So like the save points thing might have been just a passing detail that I had in conversation. But one thing that I don't refer to it as the simulation theory, because okay. I hold the word theory in very high regard. Like gravity is a theory, evolution is a theory. These are all things that we basically know to be true, and theory for me is just that like rung right below certainty. So okay. I prefer to keep it as a simulation hypothesis because I don't want to minimize the word theory.
Gotcha.
But
okay.
But the way that I explain it is the three types of simulations that are most likely would be an ancestor simulation in which no conscious minds from outside of the simulation interact with the universe within the simulation. And then we have more of a solipsistic simulation where there would be one conscious mind in something like a video game, Brain in a Vat, like Elder Scrolls. Not the Elder Scrolls Online, Skyrim. And then there's the Matrix simulation, in which conscious minds from outside of the simulation several conscious minds, like an MMO, like World of Warcraft, something like that, are interacting with a digital universe and NPCs. So those are the three leading ideas on what the simulation could be. But I first want to determine whether or not we're in a simulation before I start speculating on what the nature of the simulation is.
Okay, so is there something... Explain to me the double slit experiment. I've heard you bring it up. That's usually the hashtag that pops up every time you come into chat. So...
Them slits!
Them slits! Ariel with the slits! Which just tells me they have no idea what they're talking about. So where does that fit into the simulation hypothesis for you?
Well, in the we're going to go back to gaming and speedrunning, and I'm going to briefly explain what a damage boost is. When you get hit in a video game, most people are familiar with this. You have like a half second where your character kind of like goes translucent, and damage just falls through him instead of attacking him again. And in speedrunning, you can use that damage boost to pass through solid matter as though the character is no longer matter. So, the double slit experiment, I equate that to a damage boost in the sense that something is moving so fast that unless it is observed, it loses the continuity that we associate with matter.
Okay. And we see that in the double slit experiment?
Yes, with the double slit experiment and specifically the quantum eraser double slit experiment. What we have is a photon that hits this, it gets split into an entangled pair that has an intensity of 1/2 of the whole. So you got two photons that basically are now entangled. And one of them hits this backboard that detects it, doesn't know where it came from, just detects it. And after the backboard gets hit, it runs through the string of mirrors, half mirrors, and detectors in a way that if it went through the left slit, it will either hit detector 1 or detector 3. If it hits detector 1, we don't know that it hit detector 1. If it hits detector 3, we know it went through the left slit. If it goes to detector 1, it went through the left slit, but we don't know it. If it goes to detector 3, it went through the left slit, but we do know it. Now, if it goes to detector 2, it went through the right slit, but we don't know it. And if it goes through detector 4, it hit the right slit, and we do know it. So we are taking the active measurement out of the equation so that human observation is the only variable. And what we see is that when we don't know what slit it went through, it maintains the interference pattern of a wave. But when we do know what slit it went through, it makes the particle pattern, the two piles of particles stacking on top of each other, as we would see with matter.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, I guess what would be this matter that's going through the slit experiment? That's, if we equate it to the damage boost idea, is there something happening before that photon hits the slits, which would be the damage boost, which allows it to pass through there?
It's actually more atemporal than that. It's that the entangled particle that hit the backboard, not the one that hit any of the detectors, the one that went off and just hit the backboard and made a wave pattern or a particle pattern. The nature of that particle changes before we observe it. But observation is the variable. So it's more atemporal in the sense that cause is happening after effect.
Okay. So from my understanding of how the double slit experiment works is, yes, we can take 10 scientists and they can observe this photon or electron going through the slits and recognizing that it is both a particle and waves, and they're going to get 10 different quote unquote answers, and my terminology might be shit, but then collectively we can understand what's happening. So just because one person's observing it one way and another person is observing it another way doesn't make that person then the cause for what's happening. Am I right? Does that make sense?
No, if 10 different scientists are looking at it, all 10 of those scientists are going to see the exact same thing. Like, they're all going to see that the photon that went into the detectors hit detector 3, or hit detector 1, or hit detector 2 or 4. They're all going to recognize that it hit the same detector. But if it hits detectors 1 or 2, we do not know which slit it went through.
Okay.
And when we don't know what slit it went through, it has a wave pattern. And when we do know which slit it went through, it has a particle pattern. But it develops that wave or particle pattern before it's observed. And it's like the observation acts after the effect.
Does it have both characteristics simultaneously the whole time?
No, it doesn't. It's whether or not it's being measured. Like the very first double slit experiment was just, we noticed that light had an interference pattern. We started it out with photons having an interference pattern, so we determined that light is a wave. And then we put a detector on one of the slits. And this is the which way experiment. Now, when we put that detector on, what we see is that the pattern collapses and it goes into a particle pattern. So then we did a delayed choice experiment to where we're putting the detector after the photon has gone through the slit. So now we have a delayed choice where it goes through the slit and then it's being detected whether it hit. That should make the interference pattern, but it made the particle pattern. And it was finally the quantum eraser that simultaneously one photon's being observed, the next photon isn't, and the one that isn't getting observed, the one that we can't tell, the one that hits one or three, when they hit 1 or 3, they make an interference pattern on the wall before they hit detectors 1 or 3. And then when they are being observed and they hit detectors 2 and 4, they make a particle pattern before they hit detectors 2 and 4 later.
And so because this exists, and because the damage booster exists in a video game, you're equating the two. This is now evidence that this thing that's happening is then a simulation.
Well, the damage boost is one example, but a more general example is just a frame perfect glitch, where under the right circumstances, you can cause things to act outside of the way that physics would expect them to act.
And where do we see that in real life?
The place where we see that in real life is in the double slit experiment, where if you're moving fast enough, it requires observation for something to have a state of matter. And if it doesn't have observation and it's moving fast enough, then it never reaches a state of matter, but just that wave property.
I don't think I understand the simulation theory to be the way in which you're describing it. And that could be ignorance on my part. So, like, the part that I'm having a problem with is I don't believe that the observer affects the outcome. What is happening is just by natural occurrence, and they're observing something but we can compile, right?
I mean, observation can have an effect. It does.
Okay. Well, then, I mean, again, I have a very elementary understanding of this double slit experiment, and then particularly you said what did you say? That might be a different thing than what I'm thinking of. Anyways,
I'd like. I can you elaborate more on the question, because the way that I understand it is that observation is the variable.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
it's.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I think that at that scale, when you're talking about like these quantum things, I think there are many variables that are like one observer, and that just observing the thing changes it, and then an observer observing that observer could change it. I think it's all I don't know, but like all of these things are interacting with each other, so I don't know if that's making any sense.
Well, no, multiple observers will not have an effect. Like, if one observer sees one thing, if 10 observers watch, they all see that the photon, all 10 of them will agree that it hit detector 3, or it hit detector 1. All 10 of them will agree that it hit the same detector. It's just that if it hits detectors, excuse me, sorry. If it hits detectors 1 or 3, we do not know exactly which slit it went through. And not knowing which slit it went through changes the past.
Wait, what? Tell me how you got that leap.
Because it hits the backboard first. The entangled photon that hits the backboard before anything is detected or recorded. And then it bounces through this mirror and detector maze. And if it went, we can see the interference pattern first and know it's going to go through detectors 1 or 3. And then we see a particle pattern and know if it went through detector 3 or if it went to detector 2 or if it went through detector 4. So if it goes to the left side and it falls into the left side like a particle pattern, we know for a fact it hit detector 2. If it goes to the right side and it falls to the right side in a particle pattern, we know it hit detector 4. But if it hits 1 or 3, we do not know which slit it went through, and it's already made the interference pattern as though it knew whether or not it was going to be observed in the future.
So does that conclude that there is a consciousness behind the thing knowing it is then being observed?
I don't think it concludes that there's
is that then what's the word I'm looking for? Is that then the mind, the simulator, the person, knowing that its creation is going to view that, so then interferes because it has the consciousness to know that something's watching it at that moment in time?
I actually had to do a couple of things with YouTube for just a second. Could we please hold off getting into the Discord until after the lecture? We'll be more than happy to take your questions and comments and stuff after that. I'd just like to wait until we actually open up the lines to do that. Anyway, could you repeat that question, please? I I'm doing my editing and all that stuff at the same time.
Yep, no worries. So you said that, and that it knows that something is watching it, so therefore it decides to. So I'm asking, is there a consciousness behind the thing that knows that something's observing it, so it changes its decisions, or is that then the interference of the simulator, the person that creates the simulation?
The first, not to be misquoted, I didn't say that it knows. I said it is as though it knows. I cannot assert that the photon itself is consciously aware of what its twin sibling is doing. What I'm saying is that it is similar to it knowing. And as far as we can tell, the simulator, if we were created by a batch of scientists for the if we were created by a batch of scientists for the sake of an ancestor simulation to wonder what would happen if we started making plastic, and find out that if we start making plastic we're gonna burn ourselves to death, something like that, then the the scientists that created the simulation would be completely irrelevant to the actual cause and effect happening. The idea of atemporality, the idea of the one sibling hitting the backboard before its counterpart hits a detector, just gives me the idea that time doesn't move the way we think it does, and I look at more of time as a single fourth dimensional shape. And we'll go with a small scale on this. Mr. Biddy, I'm going to try to make a picture of you fourth dimensionally, and it's actually going to start out with a hospital, and we're not going to go into a whole lot of detail, but you're going to be really little tiny, and it's going to be like a snake that is every moment that you've ever lived, and you're going to get bigger, and you're going to move around, you're going to go to work, you're going to go home, you're going to meet BittyBuddha, and like that, those two snakes are going to be like intertangling for a while and dancing along, and it's going to end with the end of the snake being you, hopefully really fucking old, and just this single fourth dimensional shape that is you in every moment.
Okay.
And so I based on the fact that cause and effect don't seem to be a simple matter of linear time, it leads me to believe that save state thing that you're talking about, where it's all happened already, and I'm going to quote the Oracle from the Matrix on this one. You've already made the decision. You just don't know you've made the decision yet.
And so it's not necessarily that time is a linear thing. It's time is all happening all at once. It's all happened, and it is all yet to happen.
The Tao.
All time is affecting all time all the time.
That's deep.
And I think I actually pulled that one from quantum gravity research. But yeah, that's what it basically means. And we're going to get into some speculation here with time travel, because with time travel, most people think about like Back to the Future, where you've got Marty McFly disappearing while he's playing the guitar. And I don't think that type of time travel would ever be possible in the event that we ever prove time travel. But instead, it would be more like you go back in time to kill Hitler, and you're gonna kill him while he's waiting to find out if he's going to hear back from art college, and in the process, you look like a race of people that he already doesn't like, and when you make the attempt to kill him, you set in chain the sequence of events that causes World War II. You don't change the past because the past has already happened, and it's one block of things. Because like flat out, that's what everybody thinks of. What did you go back in time? Kill Hitler. That might be the thing that caused World War II, is going back in time to try to kill Hitler.
Yeah, I feel like, so now do those two things have to exist together? Time travel and simulation hypothesis. How do they coincide?
Well, this was more, I was explaining time travel just for the purpose of time only happens once. Like, it's not a thing where, and yes, I phrased it bad when I said that it changes what happened in the past. It's more like the past recognizes what happened, what's going to happen in the future, and reacts to what happened in the future. Grammar gets weird when you get atemporal.
Everything, yeah. Okay.
Well, are there other things we can point to similar to the double slit experiment, but in a different analogy to like simulations that we've made?
Well, the one thing that I actually was on the Talk Heathen call-in show, I was on the other end of the call-in show for this one. And this is going to touch into next week's episode, because Johnny Angel brought something up that I thought was pretty good, is that I have to understand the mathematics of this better. So I'm just going to touch on what was said by James Sylvester Gates, that when he broke down the mathematics that described the fabric of the universe, what he found was computer code that is not similar to, but identical to, the error correcting code that we find in today's search engines. And like, that is pretty profound to me, but like I said, I want to do an episode on this next week where we just dive into the mathematics of that and find out if we can understand the mathematics better. But finding strings of ones and zeros that are identical to error-correcting computer code seemed to me to be significant evidence that this is some type of computer program.
Okay. I don't know anything about that.
So if it wasn't, we would just assume that this code that was found. I don't know much about the topic, but that wouldn't be what we'd see. What would we find?
I honestly don't know what we would find if we weren't in a simulation, but I don't think it would be ones and zeros put together in the exact same way as Google's error correcting code.
Mm-hmm.
And like, there is the potential that it's the most efficient way to do it, but I don't think humans would do it the most efficient way the first time. So that leads me to think that, well, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't the first time. It took us probably, 15, 20 years to perfect Google and get it to the point that it's at now. But I would expect to see something more organic than something binary. Because we don't live for the most part, the universe is not binary. There is gradient almost everywhere until we get down to the Plancks.
Okay. But that's what we now is that our understanding, or just our current understanding, that gets us down to the Planck length? Is it possible that we could expand further, dig deeper down, and find that there's not kind of this discrete measurement that's the smallest point?
It is possible, and the Plancks are kind of one of the cruxes of the simulation hypothesis. It is and while it's possible, what we're seeing is basically a speed limit and a size limit on how matter can exist. But at the same time, you and I can break the Planck lengths right now with the Mandelbrot set. Are you familiar with the Mandelbrot set?
Yeah, like a fractal image that is the same no matter what.
Right. And
granularity you're looking at.
Yeah, the Badonkadonk Snowman. And and when we just within the physical universe, we had this theoretical Planck length, Planck time. But if we were to look at a Mandelbrot set, we could imagine it at a level deeper than the Planck length. So we could think about a single Mandelbrot set inside of a Planck length, and use the Planck length as a grid, and then make an entirely new Mandelbrot set within that Planck length within our minds. And because our minds can break the Plancks, but the universe can't, that's what leads me more to believe that there are conscious minds outside of the simulation interacting with the digital universe.
Okay, and those conscious conscious minds, would those be just humans, or would they be?
They would. I think of something like a society. I would not. I'll go as far to say that they would be people. I will not say that they're humans, in the same sense that Vulcans, Romulans, Cardassians, not Kardashians. Kardashians aren't people. Cardassians are. Yeah, one is a horrible reptilian beast, and the other one's on Star Trek.
Nice.
But I would say that all those different species are people, even though the ones on the Enterprise, for the most part, are human. So I would say that I would say that the society outside of the simulation would be people, but I wouldn't assert that they're going to be human.
Okay. And did they? I guess just this is just speculation. Just in your hypothesis, is it something that they created so they could experience like basically get readings of how we experience the world, or would it just be like, I need to run a simulation on what happens?
Plastic.
What?
Okay.
But
well,
I'm assuming
yeah.
at this point we're past the point where we've made plastic, if we have technology able to build simulations.
Well, what about like hemp plastic relative to petroleum plastic? Because hemp plastic and petroleum plastic are two different things. And you can do everything with hemp plastic that you can do with petroleum plastic. So that would just be an example of, well, what if we started using fossil fuels to make plastic, and then find out that, methane breaks out of the permafrost and turns us into Venus. So,
So
I
it's not necessarily about like it experience the human experience. It's just interpreting what would happen if these parameters are set. Boom, simulation's done. Here's our data point. But we experience it as a complete timeline, even though it.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole ancestor, right? That's the ancestor
yeah,
simulation.
it's a way
Okay.
to do
So,
something safely in a simulation before you do it in real life and risk turning your planet into a molten ball of fire.
but you said that you didn't lean to a particular uh, simulation hypothesis. You don't lean because that's what you asked, right?
Um,
You don't lean one or the other.
I favor the Matrix one. I just don't think it's a good idea to spend too much time speculating on the nature of the simulation until we determine it. Now, I myself am neon in the sense that I think that we're in a Matrix style simulation, but I it's it's kind of getting ahead of myself to be that confident that we're in a Matrix style simulation before we can actually prove that we're in a simulation. So while I lean toward the Matrix style simulation, I don't want to speculate too much on the nature of the simulation.
Okay. So if and that's fine. So let's go back to the like telling if what we are in is a simulation. So if we find kind of like the Mandelbrot where it just keeps going. If we find that in reality, and not even in our minds, but we can break the Planck length, the universe breaks the Planck length, and we figure out how to dig deeper and figure that out. Does that falsify the idea of a simulation? Like if it's a continuum and not discrete, does that make a simulation impossible?
Um, it would do more to falsify it, and we would no longer be able to use the Planck constants as evidence or argument for a simulation. So
Okay.
if we were to dive deeper than the Planck lengths, then that would wipe it off the table as explanation for simulation.
Okay. And I guess there would be never any way to prove that it's not. I mean, that it's not discrete because you just say, well, we just haven't gone deep enough.
Right.
And yeah, that's another problem is like our measurement. But at the same time, the Planck lengths refer to like the size of subatomic particles, the smallest bits of matter, and how fast can they move? And that's what the Planck time is basically a speed limit.
Okay. And so, like the Planck time is like the smallest unit of time that can be incremented by.
Yes, similar to like a 60 frames per second, 60, oh, how many hertz? I
So, like on your frame rate on your TV, like so it prints a screen, and that's one frame rate, and it prints another screen, and then it creates that animation.
Right, and your TVs will never well, TVs might get faster, but my TV runs at 60 FPS. My TV will never be able to show me anything faster than 60 FPS.
Right. So the Planck time is kind of the baseline. You're never gonna have a better resolution video than Planck time.
The resolution would actually be the Planck length. The refresh rate would be the Planck time.
Right. Okay. Refresh rate. Got to get my terminology.
Whoosh.
What does that?
I'm following. I don't think I can contribute, but I'm following what you're saying. Yeah.
And yeah, that's
I I actually think you do a really good job, Ario. I just think that a lot of the content in which you're talking about, people are not familiar with. So when you start talking about all of this, the quantum mechanics, I mean, your average Joe isn't going to know what you're talking about. So I don't think it's necessarily a you problem, but you do run into the issue of a lot of it, particularly in the atheist community, of not giving you the respect because they're already presupposing that we are not in a simulation. So
Right, and that is a problem that if you I'm not a physicist. Like flat out, I am a physics enthusiast. I enjoy studying it. I haven't been to the university or any university, and there's a good chance that I got bad information, and I'm using bad information to continue from that, and that's why I do everything I can to stay open to other people's arguments and try not to make an echo chamber out of this, because I don't want to sit here and pretend like I'm right or that I know more. I'm sitting here saying that I have an idea and I want more clarification. I want more evidence one way or the other, because as of right now it is unfalsifiable, and I want to try to break it from that to where we can just know one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. I feel like it's something that outside of like being removed from the simulation, you could never truly be able to tell or truly be able to prove that you're in a simulation. You could, I guess I don't know if you could prove that you're not either.
Well, I would actually go the opposite direction on that. I think that we'd be able to prove that we are in a simulation, and I think it would be easier to prove that we are in a simulation than to prove that we aren't. Like, because if we prove that we're not in a simulation, that could have been the people outside of the simulation changing the simulation so that we didn't know we were in a simulation. And that's when we get into that unfalsifiable. So instead of trying to falsify it, I want to do what I can to verify it above all other explanations.
And by looking for evidence that matches the simulations we know.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That makes sense.
And yeah, like I said, if I am also looking for evidence that does contradict us being in a simulation, but that would be a lot harder to find.
Do you have any thoughts on what that might look like? Trying to rack my brain on what that would be.
If we could make computer programs, a television screen, something that was able to transcend Planck length or Planck time. If we made a computer program that could get smaller than Planck, then I think that would be a good start to falsifying the simulation hypothesis. If we can do more with computers than what our organic universe can, and we can best it, then that would say that even if we are in a computer simulation, then the people who made our simulation aren't as good at making computers as us. And and when you're getting into an explanation like that, at that point you are really grasping at straws. When you say the people that made us don't know how to make computers as good as we can. It's like, no, now you're stretching. Now you're getting into God claims.
So the Planck length or the Planck measurement, whatever the hell you want to call it, that is foundational as of right now. Is there anything else that is on the same level, or is it from that you are now building up? Does that make sense?
Please elaborate. I think I understood the question, but I want to make sure I understood it.
Um, so the Planck length, as of right now, is the foundation. Like, this is what you need in order for the simulation hypothesis to give credence to, right? So, is there anything else equivalent to the Planck length that, if that were to be proven, or we were to expand our information on this thing, then is there anything else? Because all I've heard is about the Planck length and the double slit experiment. Is there anything else scientifically or whatever that it helps validate this simulation hypothesis? I am really getting my questions.
Well, another way to falsify it would be going to being able to observe before the Big Bang, and I'm not even necessarily saying we have to see a universe before the Big Bang, but something like proving that we are in a cyclical universe would do more to falsify the simulation hypothesis. If we show that we're just part of this endless run of universes that get bigger as more time gets collected. And that's a whole nother story there. But if the universe comes back in on itself and drops in, we could look at the nature of the universe at the end of the last one, and it would help us determine the nature of this one.
So if it's a cyclical thing, does that rule out a simulation?
No, it gives us more to observe. And if because at the point of the Big Bang, general relativity breaks down. And special relativity is the only thing there. So at the point in time when general relativity breaks down and special relativity is the only thing in the universe that exists, that would give us a better observation than the universe now, where we have to shatter subatomic particles in the Large Hadron Collider to get to that quantum level, to get from general relativity to special relativity. So if we can look at special relativity as a whole, it would allow us to better understand the nature.
Okay.
Can I take it in a different direction?
Of course.
Okay, so you are about, I came out of religion probably around the same time you did. Do you feel that, do you feel like the simulation hypothesis at least gives you comfort in the fact that there could potentially be purpose to your existence? Because without it, then we really are just meaningless. I mean, there's no goal to this shit, and so you can end up in deep nihilism, right?
Well,
so does this kind of help you on a emotional level?
Not really, because I have more of an absurdist view anyway. As far as we can confirm. And mind you, that's why I don't call it the simulation theory, is because we
Did I
don't.
say that again?
No,
Okay.
you didn't. I'm reiterating that I call it a simulation hypothesis because as far as we can confirm, we are useless specks of dust riding a useless speck of dust around a useless speck of dust. And the purpose that I find in life doesn't come from a simulation, doesn't come from a god. The purpose that I find in life comes from the people around me. Comes from giving somebody a lift home. Comes from helping somebody up when they're down and out. That's where my purpose comes from. So whether we're in a simulation or not, I am not going to lose any purpose, and I'm not going to lose any sense of meaninglessness. Because if we're in a simulation, that just means that I'm a character in a video game, so I'm equally meaningless as a speck of dust.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't do anything one way or the other to give me more or less significance, because I am significant and I am meaningless.
Okay, fair enough.
But with that, I think we dove about as far as we're going to get into this. We are an hour into the discussion, and I would like BittyBuddha to go ahead and open up with the shameless self-promotions while we are opening up those phone lines.
Shameless plugs, all right.
Gotta love them shameless plugs.
My show is on Monday nights at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and next week we are going to be having Dr. Jim Majors on and talking about who is the Antichrist? Who is he? Does he exist? Is he in the Bible? You'll find out on Monday. Do I have anything else? Oh, I'm going to be on Your Friendly Neighborhood Atheist on, I believe, the 17th, but it could also be the 19th because I'm really bad at calendars, where we're going to be doing a fundraiser for the Freedom from Religion Foundation. So you'll have to tune into that. I don't actually have that date on hand. And I think that's all the shameless plugs I've got right now.
Support the Freedom from Religion Foundation any way you can. That's about as far as on that as I'm going to touch. Do you have a Patreon or any other way that people can support your channel?
We are launching a Patreon event on Valentine's Day. So we are asking anybody if they want to be our Valentine to tune into that. And that's when we'll be launching the Patreon.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and...
Announced here first on your channel, Ario.
Well, thank you for that. And it looks like we have got Tommy Wood coming in. I'm going to respectfully request that you... Tommy Wood can jump in on the video. Go ahead, if you'd like. Well, I did that wrong. Let me go back to the grid and unmute him, because that was a problem that we had when I first started up the Discord, is I keep everybody muted just for the sake of like knowing who's coming in beforehand. But Tommy, you are off mute. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, you were coming in loud and clear.
Okay, great.
So go ahead.
I really enjoyed this episode because it's two different perspectives. Like someone who has delved into in questions of simulation hypothesis, and people who also have delved into other areas of reality, but not necessarily Simhype. And I think it's a great place for us to come together and try and meld our views, because the simulation hypothesis would be a very basic underlying fundamental proposition for all other ideas to be based on. And I think it's important that we understand the fundamentals of reality. It's exactly what you were explaining with the double slit experiment, the quantum racer experiment, and all that.
Well, Tommy, I greatly appreciate that. Did you have any questions for the skeptics, specific questions for me, an argument that you might not have brought before?
I would like to bring up how I should say hello.
That'd be a good start.
Yeah.
Hello.
Britt.
And yeah, Tommy Wood, we're actually going to be co-hosting a collaboration project, because I'm an atheist, he's Christian, but we both subscribe to the simulation hypothesis. So we're going to be going back and forth to each other's shows and kind of like talking about which way seems most likely, just to keep the echo chamber not echoing.
Yeah. So basically what my viewpoint is, and the question I have is, if you're looking for meaning in reality, yet there may be a simulation, like that's where we have to question like consciousness and the existence of consciousness, not only the simulation, but consciousness is something that's even more complicated than the simulation, and we all have it. And with your, you had mentioned the three different types of simulations that are possible: solipsistic,
Ancestor or Matrix.
matrix, yeah. And I think that it. I think there's another one which just might be exploring the future, like what you can't rule out the fact that there might be potential for experimentation for things that have never happened before.
Well, Mr. Biddy, would you like to touch on this one? Because I think we talked a little bit about this, and I want to see how good I've been explaining things.
All right.
Spotlight.
All right. I'm gonna need Tommy to ask his question one more time just so I can respond correctly to it.
Okay, I'll try and paraphrase. If there was a meaning to reality that had to do with a difference between the simulation or non-simulation, and it meant that your ideas were new and not necessarily ancestor or dealing with a game, but some sort of reality that we experience, how would that affect you with meaning being this is your reality that we live in?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know as if that. I think I'm kind of on the same boat as Ario there. That like it doesn't change my worldview either. I'm meaningless in one way or meaningless in the other way.
And I'm going to go ahead and try to ask a question that I think Tommy was trying to get to.
Okay.
Where he was basically saying that what if it's not an ancestor simulation, but it's looking toward the future?
Okay. I mean,
Is that accurate?
if
Tommy?
Yeah.
All right.
I feel like that would be. I mean, yeah, that's a viable use for it, and if we could be. I mean, that's it seems perfectly reasonable that if there were the powerful enough computational power to do these simulations, that would be one of the use cases for it.
Yeah, it's definitely a potential possibility. I guess what the main reason I wanted to call in is because it not only the fundamentals of quantum physics, but the fundamentals of psychology, to where what we experience is in our minds, and if our minds is in a cloud, then we're not even in our physical bodies. We must accept that we are more than our physical bodies, and I think it goes deeper than just a simulation, but like a soul consciousness.
And
that it's just so much deeper than just calling it a game.
And as of right now, the only evidence we have of consciousness are the electrical impulses in our brain. And I can't go as far as a soul if we don't have any evidence of a soul, but instead electrical impulses would basically mean that our consciousness, our soul, would just be the player character interaction.
But do you distinguish between the brain and the mind, like the consciousness and the brain?
The mind is a product of a brain. The brain is a physical the brain is a physical organ, and the mind is the combination of electrical impulses. Like your computer is hardware, but the ones and zeros running through it are the electrical impulses that let us see the screen. But the computer doesn't have a soul, but it still has the electrical impulses that have the emergent property of that would be similar to a mind.
Well, see, I think what most people don't understand is that our consciousness does not exist within our brain. There's like a Cartesian dualism I'm sure you're familiar with that.
And there's
But
no evidence to support that.
yes, there is. There's timed tests, psychological experiments that show that people don't experience things until a half a second after their brain experiences them.
Well,
There are
that's all we're talking about now is that thing we're talking about with the quantum eraser, where the particle hits the backboard before it hits the detector. So, I mean, you're saying that the soul is equal to the photons, and that completely destroys the definition of any kind of soul.
No, the soul would equal the back period where the predestination of the particle has been determined to go. That beforehand is what the soul is.
So, are you asserting that photons have souls?
Well, quantum eraser experiment does show that quantum or that particles behave in groups. So there is some sort of understanding or some sort of consciousness that resides within the controlling body of the particles.
Not groups, they function as entangled pairs. So, like when you say groups, you're getting very loose with the definition when they're actually functioning in entangled pairs. Are you asserting that the photon has a soul because it responds a half second before the other its entangled sibling?
No, I'm not. What I'm talking about is the human condition, and that there's a meaning for life, and that as an individual, a conscious individual who can affect the outcome of reality, that we have a soul that is our consciousness, and we affect the outcome of reality by reducing the wave to a particle.
Well, according to that whole fourth dimensional snake thing, we're not even affecting reality. Reality's already happened and we are experiencing reality, not necessarily affecting it. We are having an effect on reality through what we're doing, but we are not affecting reality in the past or future in the same sense that you're talking about.
Well, we can see measured in real time that we affect reality. Whether it's recorded or not is inconsequential because it's there. It's the basis of understanding of the fundamentals of reality. There is a permanent reality and there's an experiential reality, and we have to just accept both of them.
I wouldn't say they're different, but I actually think that I'm cutting off my co-hosts way too much, so I'd like to see
Yeah,
if one of them wants to cut in.
yeah. What do you think about that?
I have kind of off-topic question because I've never met. Ooh, I'm echoing a Christian that is also in this Simhype community. So to have this dualistic view, is the simulation as far as Christianity is concerned, is God is outside of the simulation. He's creating a multitude of simulations, but then the soul inside of the simulation is what then goes on. Like, where does the Bible come into this? And then is that the soul that goes on to eternity? But he does multiple simulations to see, like, what is the Bible? I have so many questions as far as how this works in your theology.
You just summed it up all in what you just said was just a summary of what I believe, really.
Okay, so it's basically more of okay, I think I got it. So did Jesus actually live, or is this the narrative that's encoded into everything, and that so God never sent himself to live inside of the simulation?
So that's the exact point I go for every time I try to explain myself to someone through either lengthy or quick conversations, which they might think I'm crazy or whatnot. But there is a God outside of the simulation that I feel, and I feel the simulation. And I believe that Jesus Christ was a human created inside the simulation by God to be a sacrifice for the world.
Okay. So all the times in the Old Testament, the angel of the Lord is oftentimes a terminology used for God then coming and he wrestles with Jacob, right? That's how he gets his name Israel. So is that a holographic God that's then inserted into the simulation because God never enters the simulation?
Well, I would consider the Holy Spirit the simulation, and the Father God, and the Son Jesus.
Now, when you say the Father God, you're kind of getting redundant. Would you, like, what would you consider Father slash God to be specifically? Like, you're saying that the Holy Spirit would be similar to the program as a whole?
And
Well, the simulation would be our go between humanity and God, and the outer reality that I think you touched on earlier, where you feel that there's a society in the outer realm, and I feel that way as well, and that's what I feel, that the simulations are linked to that outer reality, but there is a God above that.
so the Trinitarian doctrine, it comes in the 4th century. So to this ideology, like did God purposely encode things that were then going to be contradictory positions to the Bible? Like, because if you think about the Tanakh and how that was written and how it evolved, and then how we have the New Testament and that was edited over time, like all these things were added to it, and then these books aren't even written by Paul. So is reality somehow like reality doesn't affirm that the Bible? Like, I don't understand why God, if he wants no one to perish and that all men were to come to know him, that he would allow a simulation that would, if free will exists, the very thing that could not be altered is then the thing that describes him so that people could actually come to know him. But even in this simulation, he's actively working against himself for people to be saved.
I see exactly what you're saying, and it is a conundrum, it's a paradox. But what we have to do is, since I am also a believer in Eastern religions, I meditate, I listen to sound vibrations, and I try to free my consciousness from the Maya or the world that surrounds me. And I know that what surrounds me does not exist.
Wait, say that again?
The
world
as in Eastern religions, you must shed your understanding of the human.
Oh, did we lose them?
Reality.
I think we lost you for a little bit. You cut off for a good 7 or 8 seconds.
Oh man.
Like, no, I think I got it. Okay, so it like I think I heard what you said. Okay. This is so new to me, so I'm not trying to be an asshole or anything like this. I'm just really trying to understand the position, and like, because this is so foreign. You are the first Christian I have ever met, and I do this, like, you could say, for a living, that believes in the Simhype. So is all of that has existed, meaning the billions and millions of years that we know our universe to have existed and for human life to be on the planet, is that where did the simulation start at the Big Bang? Is that correct?
Well, simulation began at the entry of the first human being into the program, because nothing could have been experienced prior to a human being consciously experiencing the environment.
A quick question: are other living things, like just other animals, dogs, cats, are they just
sentient?
Yeah.
Me and Ario touched on this earlier. We don't know. There hasn't been any experiments done to test whether the animals can collapse the wave function.
To be more specific, we had actually talked about an experiment where we use, I would prefer dolphins because I think they're slightly smarter than chimpanzees, but I would use I would have dolphins observing the quantum eraser and see if dolphins can collapse the wave function. And if dolphins are capable of collapsing the wave functions, then it shows that consciousness is not a purely human phenomenon.
Yeah, we haven't done that yet.
We haven't got the.
Well, what are we waiting for?
Let's do it, right?
Is there a humane version of SeaWorld? But yeah, that's and so that in itself, when you say that the simulation started with the first humans, the first problem I have with that is that you're getting way deep into last Tuesday. Not the literal last Tuesday, but last Tuesdayism. Where, like, the universe is billions of years old, but that billions of years didn't happen until the first humans. But
you explained that earlier, where you said when you go into the quantum racer experiment, things change from the past to affect the present, depending on that observation. And that's exactly what.
And I corrected that when I said more accurately, all time affects all time all the time. So, like, when I slip up and I make a correction, we have to use the correction and not the slip up.
Well, I still believe in what you said. I don't think that was a slip up. I think you actually quoted what is actually true about reality.
But at the same time, if we haven't done the quantum eraser dolphin experiment, then you yourself can't assert that humanity caused the simulation to start going. Then we're going to ignore the last Tuesdayism for this point, because if dolphins are able to affect the quantum eraser, then the simulation started dolphins. And at what point of consciousness and sentience in the animal kingdom did the simulation actually start?
I concede. You're right. We haven't done the experiment yet, so there's no way to tell.
All right. Well, Tommy, I'm going to respectfully request that you quit while you're not that far behind. And we will touch some more on this the next time we're hanging out together. I would like to see if we can get some more calls in, because apparently BittyBuddha shared this stuff on Twitter, and now I'm blowing up in 3 languages. So
I'm gonna try and let you go. I don't know what button to press, but I'll try and figure something out.
I'll get rid of you.
I bring the people.
All right. So I'm gonna do my shameless self-promotion plugs, because I think do you have your own personal Patreon, or was the Valentine's Patreon the one you were talking about?
The Valentine's Day launch is going to be for my YouTube channel, the BittyBuddha YouTube channel.
Okay, so it is going to be BittyBuddha's Patreon, launching on Valentine's Day as a special Valentine's Day present to all those people that we love and care about, and some more romantically than others. But so, yeah, I am actually thrilled that it got announced here, because nothing gets announced here except for the random shit I'm about to say. But yeah, if you enjoy conversations like this, go ahead and do that like and subscribe thing. If you like this video like this one, if you want to see more of it, do the subscribe thing. And if you want to know about what's about to happen, when it's going to happen, do the bell icon. Because my Patreon is more than just the simulation hypothesis, because I don't want to turn this into some church, I'm not going to 501c any of this. So if you want a Patreon, to me, it's going to be the one and only RAO, all one word. And that entails my speed running, that entails my simulation hypothesis, that entails my Twitch gaming, and I've got the different tiers of that. You can get the shoutouts for $3. You can get the control what game I'm playing on Twitch for the $5. $10 a month for 3 months gets you the t-shirt, and $20 a month After 3 months, get you the sticker. 6 months, get you the coffee cup. 9 months, get you that T-shirt, and 12 months, get you the hoodie. And you get that neon line. I am pointing at the right time. Holy hell! I pointed the right way the first time this time. You get that neon butterfly floating in the matrix, and for the on the logo, so everybody can know that you at least have heard about the simulation hypothesis. I think that's all I got for shameless self-promotions. We are gonna this is kind of just gonna be a casual bullshitting for about 5 more minutes, see if we get any more calls in, because I think we've handled the topics, but more than trying to figure out who's right, no matter what our reality is, we're all in it together. And the best thing we can do is be the best people to each other that we can.
Hear, hear.
So, like, I don't want to. I don't want this to be an adversarial channel. Like, even when I'm debating, and BittyBuddha brought this up before the stream. Shane the Skeptic is definitely going to have to come on the show sometime because, like I said, when like Shane and I are friends, we get along, but as soon as the philosophy debates come up, it doesn't matter how good friends are on. Between those bells, we are going to go hard, and we are not going to hold back on each other because we're friends. We might even go a little bit rougher on each other because we're friends.
Yeah, that will be feisty. It'll be spicy when you have him on.
Oh,
I never even heard about simulation hypothesis. I will forever now say that instead of theory, until that call with you, Ariel. And then my husband explained to me like what you were the parallels that you were making. And ever since then, I'm like, yo, that's my boy. Whenever you hop into the chat, I'm like, all right, yo, what's up? Because I get it. Like, I think it's cool. And I have absolutely no problem with people trying to find answers, even if, like, sometimes I don't like the atheist community. I'm just going to say it right here on your show. I'm going to piss some people off on your show. They can be kind of trash sometimes. Like, who gives a shit? Like, I just,
it's all about individuals.
But I'm not going to deter somebody from something that they are trying to find answers to. Go for it. Like, we might be in a simulation. For me to say that we're not is then I shouldn't be a skeptic, right? I shouldn't be a skeptic if I'm going to right out the gate dismiss the idea that we could potentially be in a simulation.
Well,
I'll stop now.
Definitely one thing is I'm not going to say that I like a person because they're atheist or I dislike a person because they're Christian. I'm going to look at every person as an individual, and I would rather have somebody I can have good, healthy conversations with rather than somebody that I agree with who's an asshole about it.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to break myself from that because, like, I was in the angry atheist state. Like, I went hard in the angry atheist phase. And I was an asshole. I got rid of a lot of friends that I had during that angry atheist phase. And, I mean, for me, I do understand it because it was more along the lines of I just felt like I had the rug ripped out from under me, and I was angry at any idea that reminded me of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally can relate to that. It's like learning your entire life is a lie, and then you want to retaliate.
Well, as far, like, go ahead, finish, please.
Nope, go ahead.
Oh, well, like, I've got 2 cousins that I share a grandmother with. Like, we're not full cousins. We're, like, my grandpa and their grandpa's different folk. But aside from those two people, I am the oldest living member of my family. And, like, when I deconverted, when I actually, like, lost my sense of afterlife, it was like losing my entire family all over again and all at once.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be incredibly hard.
Like the fact that like I figured out that there's a good chance that I am never going to see these people in any kind of afterlife, and that was like some of the hope that kept driving me to have that belief, was the belief in an afterlife more than the belief in a God.
Yeah.
And I think that's what sticks a lot of people to religion and dogma, is that hope of seeing grandma.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think we're going to do it. I think we're going to be done for this week. Next week, like I said, we are going to be diving into the mathematical formulas that James Sylvester Gates was talking about in the 2016 Isaac Asimov debate. And we are going to delve deep into that and try to get a better understanding of it. Because until then, until you have an understanding of the mathematics, quoting James Sylvester Gates is just saying, smart dude says math. And I want the Simhype community to have a better understanding than smart dude says math. And thank you to Johnny Angel for pointing me in that direction.
That'll be a badass episode.
Well, thank you for that. And make sure that in a half hour, you go to the Atheist Network group, Tang, all spaced out, not like my name. My name should be spaced out, but it's all together. Tang sounds like it's all together, but it's spaced out. It's the Atheist Network group, and they're going to be chopping it up with Oz and Jenna here in about a half hour. So make sure that you tune into that, because that's where I'm going to be. I'm guessing that's where these wonderful folks are going to be. And until next time, keep it real. All right, let me just turn off my broadcast.